William, good to see you again, man. How's everything going?
Everything's going great, Josh. How are you?
Great. I'm excited to dive back in. We're talking about one of my favorite topics, which is understanding some more of the core features of Databricks today. I think we're going to dive a little bit more in depth around kind of the newer to full general production, but the serverless functionality of Databricks, which I think is super compelling for kind of ease of use and a number of different features there. So I'm excited to dive in on that for a little bit with you.
Yeah, here at Blue Orange, we love Databricks, so definitely excited to dive deeper down into the offerings. In terms of Databricks serverless, could you walk us through how that differs from the traditional Databricks clusters?
Yeah, no, great question. I think let's just take a step back and understand when we talk about serverless, and like, where does this fit in the marketplace? I think it's important to understand. I think if you think about kind of original architecture of these leading data platforms that exist, you kind of have this, it's the Snowflake and Databricks landscape are always being compared. And Snowflake took an approach of, warehousing and data workloads and did a lot of it serverless. It was just made ease of use. That's one of the things that they're always touted for is it's just easy to click and provision and kind of everything happens under the hood for Snowflake management. And the way that originally, 10 years ago, Databricks came to market was really focusing on how do we enhance the features of a notebook and really servicing a data scientist or a machine learning engineer. And then they met in the middle by coming from one more advanced analytics and machine learning focus with Databricks and Snowflake coming from ease of use for workloads in the warehouse. And now are both really full featured data platforms. And one of the challenges with Databricks is incredibly in the early days is they gave users a very fully robust set of data ops tools to optimize really aggressive workloads to run big machine learning projects. And as unlike with Snowflake trying to move data into warehousing, they pushed down all the workload and the data ops into a serverless infrastructure. But now Databricks has given that option to say, hey, let's just let the workloads run as a fully managed compute platform, and really focusing on the simplification of more data processing and analytic tasks by automating provisioning, scaling, and management of compute resources. So standard serverless offering. Traditional Databricks clusters take quite a bit of manual configuration and management, and that's both a gift and a curse. A lot of optimization of how you're running up this cluster, how long those are loaded, the concurrency, like how many
Yep.
clusters you run up, a lot of value to make sure a huge workload is run in optimized function. However, that takes work. And when you don't want to do it, say you're running a basic query, doing basic analysis, you want to just have quick ad hoc, provisioning of instances underneath the hood, or you want to think about it. You want to allow other non-technical data ops users to plug into a data environment and really get quick resourcing spin up and faster time to results, reducing idling costs. That's what serverless offers in its practice. So now you have both. You have the option to provision serverless. You can just a click of a button. You can allocate resources with instant, provisioning, or you can still go back and do highly tuned instancing. So it's kind of being a full resource workload for different types of users. And just a quick note, today it's currently been generally available on both Azure and AWS. It's currently working in GCP as well, but that hasn't been made generally available. So that's coming. It should be this year, but that's multi-cloud management pushed down. So you can use platforms on top of any cloud that you're working in and kind of don't have to think about the provisioning of resourcing overall.
Awesome. So it sounds like the fully managed environment for Databricks serverless really simplifies that administration for the users. Like you said,
Yeah,
in the
big
click of
effort.
a button, you can be able to provision that. In terms of the benefits for Databricks serverless, could you give us a bit more light around the cost efficiency and resource management of serverless?
Yeah, of course. Well, with anything, it's a trade-off, right? That's the
Yeah.
inherency. You get ease of use, but you trade off, tuning. And so what I think and they wrote about this when they launched and made a really big focus is really the efficiency of spinning up the clusters to support your workload. That's the very core focus. Ease of use to access. That's what they want to think about. And there's a trade-off there. So they certainly, what you get inside of that is an auto-managed resource consumption under the hood. So when you come with auto-managed, that means it will spin up when you need it and spin down when you're not. Pros and cons of that too. It's not,
Yep.
there's always a little bit of a black box with any serverless. And that's one of the big complaints when moving huge ML workloads inside of Snowflake. There's a lot of work that needs to be done for optimization or tooling or management. But if you look at those kind of core features that you get, there is cost efficiency in not having to manually spin up and spin down workloads, especially for general usage, right? If you're spinning up letting a non-technical user go in and do data analysis, say it's a more an analytics
Yep.
engineer or a business user that's going in and looking at dashboards and doing queries. There's cost efficiency, and they tout 20 to 40% savings over manually managed workloads. Though you can optimize workloads, it takes more cost. So they're saying considerable cost efficiency. Obviously, cost comes from resource management. So those are one and the same, but it's the auto scaling that allows for reduction of over provisioning and not having to pay for idle time. So it's the auto scaling. And then the biggest thing that you have is just efficiency overall, which is workflow efficiency, where not only do you not have to go provision instances or have in clusters that are provisioned by a data ops team put in place, you have really speed to spin up of services. So there's lower latency, which can improve productivity and the ability to get operational results much quicker. So I think those core areas are really what you're looking at. They're all interconnected, but that's a huge efficiency workflow of like spinning up instance, not thinking about it. Let's just click literally serverless button right from the play button at the top of a workload or a notebook, and you can get results that quickly.
In terms of that typical business use case that you're saying with the analyst, rather than inundating them with, maybe a lack of knowledge on how to set up a proper environment or optimized resources, it takes the load off of them. They can run their queries, do their analysis, and they don't have to worry about the optimization because it's being done on the fly for them in that case.
And I think there are a few other areas that I would say are really valuable here as well. Like, let's take this scenario where a business unit is trying to do a proof of concept here, right?
Okay.
Maybe they're not allocated the centralized IT resources to, fully optimize the compute under the hood. And you get right out the gate, this is again, the promise of a managed platform is it's good enough to go prove a value. Maybe if you're moving, like the proof of value becomes true and it moves a bunch of centralized data in, it becomes something that needs optimization. So you have that flexibility. But that, I don't personally think that should be the first thing of moving towards the nebulous business value in trying to hunt data. I always hate that term a little bit, but that's the goal we're trying for, is not putting technical friction into understanding where you can do uncovering the insights or results or dashboards that you're looking to build. And so I think this is a perfect example of let's prioritize. It's not even just non-technical users, but it's speed to value. It's saying maybe the first proof of concept doesn't need a massively optimized tuned cluster. And this is something you can just click a button and let yourself get to that result much quicker.
Right. So we understand in terms of the optimization, cost, performance, that all checks out. So in terms of security, what does it look like on that front?
So this is now a pretty tested environment with serverless infrastructure in this day and age of cloud usage, but like what you would imagine, very similar to Snowflake and managed clusters and Azure as well, Databricks effectively runs their compute workloads in Databricks exclusively managed accounts, and that isolates them from other customers. So that's kind of a separate provisioning instance that they run on. It ensures that virtual machines are terminated after use. So there's like no cross-tenant domain access challenges. And then the bigger piece is that as a user, it communicates to a control panel and the data plane, which is secured via TLS, standard protocol, and manages all that with temporary credentials. It's just like the standard list of serverless provisioning. So you kind of know that they are a best-in-class data platform and they're running it in the right layers. So it's kind of that standard expectancy that the service is spinning up clusters, it's separated from domain and keeps in isolation and not leaving redundant services. All of that's kind of cooked into the standard kind of best practices that stands overall. Yeah.
Nice. It's a mature platform. It's performant. It's secure. In terms of talking about some of the performance benchmarks and results, what do we see when we compare serverless to traditional clusters?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that, this is something that when you get the black box of underlying provisioning, there's a couple things you have to note. You don't have a lot of control, so you're really dependent on candidly, the algorithms designed by these platforms. Well, Databricks takes that seriously. Again, you were just mentioning, we are dealing with some of the best data platforms in the world that have been managing workloads for years and have tons of data, about tens of thousands of customers on this and huge amount of workloads that they have monitored. So right out the gate, serverless is selecting the best instant type for optimal performance and cost efficiency. But that's the decision it is striking between. Right now, they optimize for server provisioning time with that selection, There will be choices down the road where you can choose between, say, lower cost, right, and as an optimization. But right now, it's striking kind of a self-selected between the two of them, which is pretty typical. Less options, more efficiency. But what you're seeing, if you think about like, it's again, how many concurrent users are you looking? All these questions, but one of the things Databricks is benchmarking is just notably less latency time to execution. Yep. So they're saying they claim compared to Spark on AWS, they say it's an order of magnitude 75% faster on workload with unoptimized or provision instance than say like Spark on AWS or Presto on AWS. That's not the perfect benchmark. That's a little bit marketing in there. But it is, I think the measure you have to think is the efficiency to provisioning and then how long workloads run. They very much so come to competitive industry market levels of being very efficient in that it's able to spin up a lot of instance control, or no instance control, but a lot of speed to workload finishing. And they're running it, they claim, about 20% more efficient than say, like, again, it's like a TPC is like the kind of standard benchmarking area. That they say that's with 5 concurrent users, it's more efficient, but that's a very controlled environment. But it's a market standard of reasonable provision of both speed and provision instance efficiency. So good strike between the two.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I would say there are a ton of benefits with using serverless, but like with everything, there's always maybe the limitations or the downsides where it might not be ideal. So could you shed some light on what workloads might not be best suited for serverless, or maybe any limitations or challenges that a user might face when trying to adopt Databricks Serverless?
Yeah, I think a few examples that I would say really about earlier stage instances or ones that are running efficiently. There's actually really good cost control put into there's the ability to monitor and put budget control on this is built right into Databricks, and Unity Catalog has all the workload management built in from the governance side as well. But I think it's important to note that if you are really just thinking about what type of workloads need to be spun up and spun down, and you don't want to manage, so traditional clusters might be better on a performance or cost predictability for very specific, consistently used workloads that are larger, require a lot of specific data, like large data feeds or on that stands, and are run with very consistent frequency. You can turn something on and turn it off very consistently. But if you're thinking about stuff like interactive SQL queries, dashboard development, ad hoc data exploration, scheduling, reporting jobs, these things, they can be done a lot more ad hoc or a lot more variable. And candidly, they're maybe not the largest workloads, or even if they are, they're short running time batch. It's like, that is something that would be saying, let's take some of the data ops out of it and let it run. And then you can benchmark it against some of a, pre or post, or try a test for anything once you identify something that's a longer running job or streaming workload with, more dedicated resource. That's definitely going to be more traditional cluster management. So that's the benefit of this, is you have the choice. But ultimately, I would, heavily focus on initial architectural design of opting to leverage serverless in a lot of the general use cases of kind of data pipelining and analytic management that I think it was kind of out the gate. But
yeah, and so like you said, just to confirm there, it sounds like in terms of if you have those ad hoc, inconsistent needs, really serverless is going to be your go-to to optimize those resources.
And I think it's more of a general philosophy too, right? Yep. When is serverless better than not? I would say Databricks is leading a heavily competitive serverless entry. They've had this around for a bit in AWS. They brought it to Azure and released that this year, and GCP will be out shortly. And so it's that whole thing is just now bringing this as an option of that managed layer for those that don't want to think about it. It's exactly right.
Yep. And within the platform too, as you said, it's seamless. So the ability to flex and switch between the two can really happen without much struggle, which is great. And so with that, in terms of the future plans for Databricks Serverless, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I mentioned it supports all 3 of the workloads that we're kind of focusing on, both notebooks, workflows, and data live tables. I'm just thinking about the competition between Snowflake and Databricks. Ultimately, they want to have ease of use access and customization, and both do. And Databricks is coming from the approach of doing a lot of customization. Now let's make it very easy to spin up that under the hood. This is what their focus is. So there's going to be a ton of support of integration on all features. I think the other thing to note, I mentioned it is multi-cloud as it stands, so you can just kind of sit where it needs.
Yep.
I think there will be additional, they've announced there will be additional configuration settings to how serverless is optimizing, whether it's efficiency or whether it's efficiency provisioning or speed of a workflow or even cost optimization, right? Those are different ways of provisioning instancing under the hood. And as these platforms continue to scale out the features around serverless, they're able to tackle even larger or more complicated workflows. There's more sophistication in its insight. So I feel like there will still be, more and more workloads, even that are complex to implement, will still be something that will be better served by serverless. And that's just something we've seen across markets. So I know Databricks is a major competitor investing tons of money and focus on this area. Ease of use is clearly a market leading decision, as we've seen why these two platforms, Databricks and Snowflake, emerged with all the leading clouds offering all comparable tools. They emerged because they made it easier and better, efficiency and ease of use. And I think that's what the market is absolutely clamoring for. So I know this is going to be a big focus of continued effort of enhancing different features. So you get exactly what you want with as little management as possible. That's worth a lot to them as a platform.
Databricks Serverless, it's performant. It makes life easier. It removes data ops when you don't truly need to use it at that point in time for ad hoc analyses. And we understand the future direction that it's going in. In terms of Databricks Serverless, what closing thoughts do you have on it for organizations that are moving forward in their data maturity and landscape?
Yeah, well, my biggest thing in general is get the technology out of the way as much as possible. Data is complex. So the more you can shift any of the complexity into managed workloads, whether it be ingestion tools that we love to use or managed workloads, that should be taken advantage of, even at some additional cost, right? It's going to cost either in human resources, if not managing it by something that's kind of pushed under the hood. So we love taking managed serverless solutions or managed compute solutions when it makes sense. So I think that the general consideration and practitioners should say, what workloads, the question to what workloads do we need to tune, and then allow for the computers to do the running of it under the hood when possible. I think that's a goal that you should question as opposed to, and I think that's where the market is going. So it's really what workloads can we see cost optimization, or do you have the resourcing to consider thinking about? That's a great approach. Or we just know it's a complicated query or streaming or some of these really, more robust implementations. There should be something that you think very carefully about how you implement them so they don't balloon in costs and you have a lot of control. Everything else really should be managed by automated as possible. And that's what serverless is looking for. So having that optionality and choice is just so great to be able to have a click of a button or be able to manage something as you need under the hood. So definitely considering where to apply this is going to be how frequently, flipping the idea of making sure you're going to use as much as possible and then tune what needs to be tuned, I think is going to be the ultimate implementation solution here.
It's all about giving organizations the ability to move quickly and efficiently. And then as they prove some of those use cases or proof of values and they understand the different workloads they have, then they can start to determine, as you said, what needs to be fine-tuned and where can we offload the complexity and the tuning to the managed platform itself.
Exactly. Yep. That's just right.
Josh, thanks for giving us the deep dive into Databricks Serverless and all the features that it has to offer and how it can help organizations move forward.
Absolutely, William. Thanks for drilling me with some good questions on it. I'm really excited. And if anyone out there wants to learn a little bit more, feel free to connect and we'll share more demos and kind of examples of how to bring serverless solutions into your organization.